Hi, everybody. This is Vande, Vegte, and Nari Clemons, and we are here to introduce our class called Boundaries, Self-Care, and Meditation. Nari and I developed this class in particular for you to become a healthier healthcare provider. So you may be watching this because a friend recommended this class to you, or you've heard one of us talk about it, or maybe you stumbled across this class because you're experiencing some level of burnout and you're recognizing that you need a little bit of intervention. We are so happy that you're watching this and would love to explain a little bit more about why we created this class and what the content is like.
So, one reason that you may be taking this class is maybe you're finding that at the end of your workday, there's just not much left to give your family. Or maybe you are finding that your clinical skills are great, but you're so tired. Or maybe you're finding that you're having a really hard time managing your time at work, or even more, managing your energy in life. This field that we're in is a little confusing in that we touch our places. People normally don't touch other patients or friends. And we are one on one in a room with a patient for an hour, a lot of times, many practices, with our hands on them. And the trauma and the deep stories that come out are so personal. We have people come to us with things that they may have never told anybody in their life about. And it can be heavy. We go through a schooling and we learn so much about how to differentially diagnose, and we learn about the body, and then we go to jobs and they have all this training and everybody says be compassionate, give. And for some of us, we don't quite understand or learn or are ever taught how to turn off that valve. And so the problem is, if we give so much, that then we end up missing out on the joy, just the straight up fun and the happiness of life, because we've depleted our energy stores. We've kind of missed the whole
Mhm.
point. And we call this class Boundaries, Self Care, and Meditation. So there is a ton of research. Jen is going to talk to you about how those portions of the class are structured. But what are boundaries? Boundaries is when we need to set a limit to stop the flow of personal energy or poor time or poor physical boundaries with someone. So it's like that capacity to be like, actually, here's where I need to draw a line so that I stay grounded and centered and feeling good with myself. And then self care is what we do to replenish those energy reserves every day, to replenish our joy, to replenish our sense of awe and gratitude for what's going on in our lives, and our patience with our children and our spouses
Mhm.
or whoever is in our life. And then meditation is a beautiful way to rewire the brain. But to really get to the root of these issues of where and how we're getting depleted, we also have to have a very high level of self honesty and
Mhm.
introspection. And so the meditation piece helps with that. It's also so beautiful to integrate into our practices to help our patients change those trauma patterns.
Yeah.
But in order to change those, you have to have a shared responsibility model where it's not just on your shoulders to change everything. So Jen's going to talk you through what's going to happen in the 2 weekends of the class in this new format.
First, I want to share a little bit about how we struggled with boundaries.
Yeah.
So, our journey started after writing material for Capstone, and we worked on that project together. And it was very, very intense, and we struggled with a lot of things. But the beauty is, it brought us together, and we both realized that we struggled in these areas, but from different pathways. So, Nari was raised in an Eastern faith and she's very intuitive. She's a very high level empath. And she didn't struggle so much with physical boundaries like I did in terms of like time or space. Nari is very mindful. In fact, she started meditating when she was 19 years old at like a 10-day silent retreat. Like that was her first experience with meditation. And she has been on her cushion consistently for decades. And so her ability to notice and be present is extraordinary. But she could tell that there was this energetic boundary that was
Mm.
not working for her. And so would take on her patient's energy.
Right. Whereas Jen grew up in a more like a Catholic household and community, more traditional, I would say, like when we think of a traditional American faith system. And so much of her ideas of how to be a good woman and a good female in this world were based on service and giving. And you're selfless and you never draw a boundary. I remember the first weekend we taught together, Jen's phone was going off all the time. And I was like, girl, you have so many friends. And she's like, oh, those are patients. I'm like, calling your personal phone? Yes, they were. Shh. She once let a patient live with her when she was a newlywed. There was like a patient that didn't have a place to go. And she was like, well, if I care, I'm going to really care. A lot of us struggle with this. If we have a patient every hour, she would see the patients for 60 to 61 minutes, maybe 68. And then at the end of the day, have this mountain of charts. And so for her, it wasn't so much like she was feeling it in her body, but it was more like just overextending and giving more of herself than she had. And maybe even, if it's okay if I say this, Jen, some personal
Mhm.
relationships in her life that were equally taxing.
Definitely.
Um, and so she had to learn how to stop some of that. So it was
Mhm.
this year of like really intensively communicating with each other and finding solutions and having a bestie to work through that with. And you guys know we were already teaching for Herman Wallace, and then we'd keep seeing you guys come back talking about how you were tired or you were spent or taking so much responsibility. Like I have a patient who's not willing to A and not willing to B and not willing to
Yes.
C or D, what should I do from that for them? And my answer now is talk to them about their willingness.
Yeah.
But we don't have a lot of permission to do that. And so this is a course that gives you that permission, but also just a lot of really tangible tools. This is, I think Jen and I both find this is one of those classes that people come back and tell us all those other classes gave me manual skills, but this course changed my life.
Yes.
Jen, you want to tell them a little more?
And truly, that's our hope and our prayer. But
Mhm.
friends, in order to change your life, you have to be willing of letting go of what's no longer serving you so you can make way through patterns that will serve you.
Mhm.
We set up this course to be transformational, and that means you have to put in the work. And the work looks like this. So we only meet for 2 days. We have part 1 and part 2, and those days are about a month apart. But there are just a bunch of prerequisites for what you're going to start to change in yourself, in your mindset before part 1, and what you're going to continue to revise and change before part 2. So, part 1, we start out a little bit more in science, right? And this whole class is really science and research based, but bringing it to a place where we can use it to transform our lives. So, part 1, do a deep dive into the science of the brain. We talk about pain, we talk about trauma, we talk about PTSD, how that changes the brain of our patients, how that may have changed the brains of us. And then how meditation practices can come in and rewire the nervous system in healthier patterns. We talk about self awareness, and we do lots of different inventories to identify what areas we need to work on, whether that's physical boundaries, whether that's communication, whether that's self care, whether it's all of it. And then we give you the tools and strategies to implement these things into your life. Part 2, we come back, we get a little bit maybe softer. Part 2, we talk about our relationships, not just with our patients, but with ourselves and with the people that we love in our lives, how to construct healthier relationships, and how to build that patient shared responsibility model in our practices. We do visualization and we come up with what is it that we want to create in our lives, in our practices, in our relationships, and how to bring that forward. We dive a little bit deeper into self care in our meditation practice, in yoga practice, in our self care around work, and our self care around home. And then at the end, we have case studies to bring what you've learned into the clinic. And we have an action plan to bring what you learned into your life. And that's just not what I'm going to do differently next week. It's what I'm going to do differently next month,
Mm.
next 6 months, the next year. And then we don't leave you there. We're going to establish an online network where you can, if you want to, sign up for continued sisterhood, continued community, where we're all going through this journey together and being a resource to support each other and cheer each other on.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's interesting, like one of the other messages I think that women get a lot is like, be happy and be agreeable. But that joy, that sense of fulfillment has to come from deep, right? Or it's just kind of like lip service. And so we're not trying to necessarily make you a ton of more smiley, though that's great if that happens. It's more about like, how do we create this deep sense of renewal? So we'd really love for you to come join us. If this feels like, as you're hearing this, if you're feeling like that sounds like something I need, then we would love to have you. And Jen and I have had so much transformation through being friends that we feel like if you have a friend who might want to take it with you, amazing, because then you also have this built in accountability and support system.
Yes. Yes.
And one thing we really like about this format too is some people say like, "Man, that was so much information. It takes me a long time to integrate it. Like I'm still working on it." So you can always take part 1 and then wait like 6 months and sign up for part 2. Like you can really pace it out how you need to. We invite you to make it your own and however you would like to do that.
So we hope to see you. We hope and pray that you would really take this opportunity to invest in yourself, in that version of yourself that can show up with health and vitality and groundedness and longevity for a practice that's going to serve so many people for so many years.
Yeah, we really would like that for you. Thanks, guys.